The much anticipated Hellblade 2 is finally here. The sequel to the critically acclaimed Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice, the continuation of Senua's Saga, is surprisingly coming in with mixed reviews. There was a lot of scrutiny leading up to this release, with Xbox shutting down a few smaller studios despite recent successes, as well as not seeing much in terms of marketing for the big AAA Xbox first-party release. I only stumbled upon the Hellblade franchise recently after seeing Hellblade 2 at the January Developer Direct, and decided to try Senua's Sacrifice on Game Pass. I enjoyed the game for what it was and really liked that it was a completely unique gaming experience. But I didn't think the game set the world on fire by any means. Nonetheless, I was interested to see where the next iteration took us on Senua's journey. And while there are some good things offered in Hellblade 2, I can't help but feel disappointed in what the sequel had to offer. But let's start with the things I did like. I'm sure I'm not the first person you're hearing this from, but Hellblade 2 looks absolutely stunning. The best part of this game is when you're walking around in large environments and just enjoying the views. There's a reason this game was part of the marketing for the launch of the Xbox Series X. This is the best looking game on Xbox, hands down. Just don't turn around too fast or you'll be reminded that it's running at 30 FPS. The caveat is that there are a lot of dark environments where the game just kind of looks fuzzy. I don't know the technical or graphical terms for that, but it was a stark contrast to the beautiful open areas when you end up in a cave and it looks like I'm playing Gears of War on the Xbox 360. Regardless, the game is visually stunning, and there are times, such as the snow section, where I feel like I could convince myself this was a movie and not a video game. Unfortunately, this game might have been better off as a movie. Hell, it basically is just a movie. I'm sure a complaint you've heard is that Hellblade 2 is incredibly short. The developer was quoted saying it was around the length of the first game, an estimated playtime at around 8 hours. But from the start of the recap of the first game to the end of the credits rolling, it took me 5 hours and 21 minutes. I'm all for a shorter experience, but of those 5 to 6 hours, I'd say 50% of it is just holding the forward button walking at a cripplingly slow pace. I'm not kidding. Your 2 speeds are incredibly slow, or slightly less slow if you hold the sprint button. I feel like this was done just to pad out the game time, because if you could use the normal sprinting speed throughout the entire game, you might be able to finish it fast enough to refund the game on Steam after beating it. If there was a criticism of Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice, it was probably the combat. The combat was very simple, with light attack and heavy attack, a dodge button, and a block button that doubles as parry if timed correctly. But it seems like their solution in the sequel was just to have less combat. You also still have your focus mode, which slows down time and allows you to get multiple hits on an enemy in a row without them swinging back. But the look of the focus mode was kind of jarring. I don't know if it's the 30 FPS since I played on an Xbox Series X, but as you attack it slows down and speeds up time. And I can't help but feel like I'm either watching a claymation or fighting in a strobe light. I just didn't like the way it looked. But like I said, there are not many fights in Hellblade 2, and without counting them out in both games, it felt like significantly less battles than its predecessor. Not only was it less, but I feel like the way they handled it was objectively worse. In Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice, there are plenty of times that you're in a battle with multiple enemies, which adds some difficulty because you could be focused on an enemy that isn't actively attacking you and forces you to juggle between them. But in Hellblade 2, it feels like you only ever have one enemy to fight at a time. Even when there are multiple enemies in the area you're fighting in, it seems like there's one enemy to focus on, and as you kill them, it plays out some sort of mini cutscene before focusing you on the next singular enemy. This just adds to the feeling that you're playing an interactive movie instead of a video game. I like linear stories. I would even go as far as saying I prefer a good linear story to a big open world to explore that's full of bloat and uninteresting objective markers. But Hellblade 2 is so on rails that I can't help but feel like this is an interactive movie disguised as a video game. It might even play better if they just added button prompts throughout the entire game. At least then you'd know what you're getting yourself into. Especially with the one-shot presentation where it seamlessly transitions between cutscene and gameplay. There were times where I thought I was mid-cutscene, so I stopped holding forward because ironically my thumb was getting tired, only to realize that my character stopped climbing up the wall or crossing over the ledge. I basically needed to hold forward to get through what looked like a cutscene. Hellblade 2 is capital C, cinema. It is what games journalists think of when they describe game development as art. But as a video game offering player agency, it just misses the mark. When it comes to the story, I was interested to see where things were going. The game starts off with Senua purposely being captured as a slave so that she could find the one in charge of the slavers and stop the capturing of her people once and for all. You quickly get sidetracked and eventually change your goal once you find out the reasoning behind the slavers. You more or less try to solve the root of the problem, but it just felt like the game was mostly just a side quest. And then once I really started getting invested in the story, it was pretty much over. Without getting into specifics, I felt disconnected for the first half of the game, not really sure what our goal was. And in a game with a runtime of a little over 5 hours, I just didn't have much time to enjoy the ride once I started caring about what was happening. Senua does have some character growth and a strong realization about herself towards the end, but it just ended so abruptly. I really would have liked to see more from this game. I feel like they had a strong premise but could have expanded a lot further. On the other hand, with Hellblade 2 feeling like an interactive movie, I'm not sure I would have wanted this game to be much longer than 5 to 6 hours. I wasn't the biggest fan of Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice, but I enjoyed it for what it was. A completely unique experience utilizing spatial 3D audio and simulating the effects of psychosis. And while Hellblade 2 is essentially more of that experience, I think it lost its charm due to the fact that I already had this experience with the first game. And I just feel like the first game did it better. I know I may come across as overly negative on Hellblade 2, but that's not exactly what I intended. I think there's an audience for this game, but it's just incredibly niche. I think of gamers like myself who already have an active gamepass subscription. You can load up Hellblade 2, have a 5 to 6 hour cinematic experience with arguably the best visuals in gaming, all for no additional cost. But at a $50 price point, I struggle to think of a player that would find this worth their money. I honestly don't even think I would subscribe to Game Pass just to play this game and cancel afterwards. It's a great supplementary piece of content, but far from the smash hit that Xbox needs. With nearly 5 years of development time, it makes me wonder what Ninja Theory was doing that entire time. We more or less got 1 hour of playtime for every year of development. And with the recent studio closures by Xbox, I'm a little fearful for the future of Ninja Theory. I can't imagine this game is going to recoup its development costs, and it seems that Xbox only has room for blockbuster hits in its future. Let's just hope Ninja Theory gets another crack at it to hopefully reach Hellblade's true potential.